The rain hammered against the windows of the municipal archives, a relentless rhythm that reminded Clara of her mother's anxious fingers drumming on the kitchen table. The smell of aged paper and mildew hung heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of the approaching storm. Clara traced the rough surface of the cardboard box before her, feeling the weight of accumulated years in each worn fiber. 3 decades as the city archivist had taught her that some mysteries preferred to remain buried. But curiosity always trumped her prudence. The yellowed label simply read Case 1978-142, Thompson disappearance. Clara knew the story, as well as any longtime resident of Millwood. Michael and Sarah Thompson, a young couple from Chicago, had vanished during a romantic picnic on the shores of Serenity Lake. Their bicycles were found leaning against oak trees, the wicker basket still full of untouched sandwiches, but there was no trace of the couple. The investigation lasted for months, involving divers, bloodhounds, and even desperate mediums hired by Sarah's parents. Nothing, as if the earth had swallowed them whole. What Clara didn't expect to find, upon opening the box for the first time in 30 years, was a new folder. Recent. The crisp white paper still crackled under her fingers, contrasting sharply with the aged documents around it. Inside, a single photograph and a sealed letter. Her heart quickened as she recognized the handwriting on the envelope. The same meticulous script of all the files archived by the former director, Martha Whitmore, deceased 5 years ago. The photograph showed the lake from an angle Clara had never seen before, taken from an elevation that didn't exist on the shoreline, where the couple disappeared. The water looked darker, almost black, and there was something unsettling about the way the light filtered through the trees, creating shadows that seemed to move even in the static image. In the lower right corner, a date scrawled by hand, September 2008. They returned. Clara's hands trembled as she tore open the envelope. Martha's letter was brief, but each word carried the weight of a secret kept for decades. Clara, if you're reading this, then you finally found the box I hid. Forgive me for not having the courage to tell the truth while I was alive. The lake is not what it seems. The Thompsons didn't die. They were taken. And now, 30 years later, something is coming back. Check the abandoned cabin on the north side. But don't go alone. Never alone. My double O. My double O. Clara's world seemed to tilt. Martha had always been a pragmatic woman, skeptical of supernatural tales. If she had hidden this information, there was a reason. Clara examined the photograph again, noticing details that had gone unnoticed before. Footprints in the mud at the water's edge, far too fresh for a decades-old photo. And there, almost imperceptible amidst the shadows of the trees, the outline of 2 human figures. The phone rang, slicing through the silence like a knife. Clara answered in a choked voice. Municipal Archives. Is this Clara Martinez? The voice on the other end was male, nervous. My name is David Thompson. I'm Odd. Was Michael and Sarah Thompson's son. Clara felt her blood run cold. How did you get my number? The former director, Martha Whitmore, told me that if anything happened to her, I should look you up. She said you would know what to do with the information about my parents. Martha died 5 years ago. I know. She contacted me shortly before she passed. She left very specific instructions. David paused, and Clara could hear his heavy breathing. I need to talk to you in person. It's about what really happened at the lake, and about what's happening now. An hour later, Clara was sitting at a corner cafe, observing a man in his 40s, who carried the haunted green eyes of someone who had lost everything too soon. David Thompson had the calloused hands of a working man, but there was a tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. I was 8 when they disappeared, David began, nervously stirring his sugar. I stayed with my grandparents. For years I believed the official story. Accident, drowning, bodies carried away by the current. But Martha contacted me 3 months before she died. She said there were things she needed to tell me. Clara slid the photograph across the table. David picked it up with trembling hands, and she saw instant recognition in his eyes. Where did you get this? Martha left it for me, along with instructions to look for a cabin on the north side of the lake. David tucked the photo into his inside jacket pocket. So you don't know about the community. What community? In the 70s, there was a religious group that settled in the mountains around the lake. They called themselves the elect of the sacred waters. Martha discovered that my parents weren't just having a picnic. They were investigating reports of missing persons connected to the group. A chill ran down Claire's spine. Were your parents journalists? Dad was a freelancer. Mom worked for a Chicago newspaper. They had received an anonymous letter about strange rituals at the lake, people who went into the community and were never seen again. The cafe seemed to grow darker, the voices of other patrons fading into a distant murmur. Clara remembered the stories she'd heard as a child about strange lights on the lake, chants echoing across the water on moonlit nights. She'd always dismissed them as urban legends. Does the community still exist? Officially, no. They disbanded in 1979, shortly after my parents disappeared. But Martha believed that some members remained in the area, in hiding. David opened a folder he'd brought with him, revealing yellowed newspaper clippings and black and white photographs. One image showed a group of people dressed in white, standing at the edge of the lake. In the center, a tall man with a long beard raised his hands towards the sky. His eyes, even in the grainy photograph, seemed to pierce the soul of whoever looked at them. Josiah Blackwater, David murmured, the community's leader. Martha managed to find out he had a history of fraud and assault. He changed his name several times, always running when the authorities got close. Clara studied the photo more closely. There was something familiar about the man's face, a vague memory she couldn't place. Is he still alive? Martha thought so. She believed he was still around waiting. Whatever happened to my parents, she thought it was connected to some kind of cycle, something that repeats every 30 years. Why 30 years? David hesitated, as if the next words were difficult to pronounce. Because that's when the children born in the first ritual come of age, when they're ready to continue the cycle. That night Clara couldn't sleep. She stayed on her porch, watching the full moon reflect on the distant surface of the lake. The air was heavy with humidity, and something else, a sickly sweet smell, reminiscent of decaying flowers. Every sound of the forest seemed amplified, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves, the distant hooting of an owl. At 2 in the morning, her phone rang. Clara? David's voice was altered, almost a whisper. You need to come to the lake, now. What happened? I came to check the cabin alone. Clara? They're here. The Thompsons. My parents. The line went dead. Clara drove down the deserted roads with her heart pounding. The road leading to the north side of the lake was little more than a dirt track, full of potholes and fallen branches. Her headlights cut through the darkness, creating dancing shadows among the trees. When she finally reached where David had parked his car, she found the vehicle empty, the driver's door open, keys still in the ignition. The cabin was about 200 yards from the shore, hidden among centuries-old pine trees. Clara grabbed her flashlight and followed the narrow path, each step making the dry leaves crackle under her feet. The sweet smell was stronger here, mixed with something that resembled burning incense. The wooden structure was in better condition than she expected. The planks, though darkened by time, seemed solid. The windows were covered with heavy curtains, but a faint light filtered through. Clara approached the front door, noticing it was slightly ajar. David? She called softly. Silence. She carefully pushed the door open. The interior of the cabin was illuminated by dozens of candles arranged in concentric circles on the floor. In the center, David was kneeling, motionless, staring intently at something Clara couldn't see from where she stood. His clothes were dirty with earth and leaves, as if he had crawled through the forest floor. David, are you all right? He slowly turned, and Clara saw that his eyes were glazed over, pupils dilated, as if he were under the influence of some drug. When he spoke, his voice sounded distant, as if coming from far away. They showed me Clara, showed me what really happened. That's when she saw what David was looking at. In the center of the candle circle, 2 figures were sitting side by side, a man and a woman, dressed in the same clothes they wore in the police file photo. He in a blue polo shirt, she in a floral dress. But there was something terribly wrong with them. Their skin had a waxy pallor, and although their eyes were open, they didn't blink. They weren't breathing. Clara took a step back, but the door slammed shut behind her. A deep, familiar voice echoed through the cabin. "Welcome, Clara Martinez. We've been expecting you." From the darkest corner of the cabin, an elderly figure emerged from the shadows. He was a tall, thin man, with white hair that reached his shoulders, and icy blue eyes that seemed to know all the secrets of the world. Clara recognized him immediately from the photograph. Josiah Blackwater, though decades older. "You," she whispered. "Me. And very soon you too will become part of our eternal family." Josiah smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. "Martha tried to stop us, you know. Tried to hide the truth. Protect you. But the lake always collects what is due." Clara felt her legs weaken. "What did you do to them?" "To the Thompsons. We did what was necessary. Michael and Sarah came here looking for answers, just like you. And they found far more than they bargained for." Josiah approached slowly, his footsteps echoing on the wooden floor. "They discovered the lake's true purpose, the power residing in its sacred waters. They discovered that death is merely a transition." David rose mechanically, his movements stiff like a puppet's. "He showed me Clara, showed me how I can be with them forever, how we can be a family again. David, you need to fight this. Whatever they've done to you, you can resist." But as she spoke, Clara felt a strange lethargy taking over her own limbs. The air in the cabin was heavy, laden with more than just incense, a drug. She realized too late. She was being slowly poisoned. "The lake chooses its guardians," Josiah continued, his voice taking on a hypnotic tone. "Every 30 years, new initiates join those who came before. Martha was supposed to have been chosen 5 years ago, but she was resistant. She preferred ordinary death to eternal life." Clara forced herself to concentrate, fighting against the fog invading her mind. Martha had left the letter for a reason. There were clues she hadn't yet deciphered. "Why me?" she asked, buying time. "Because you're special, Clara. You always have been. Your mother knew it when she brought you here as a baby. She knew you had the gift." The world seemed to stop. "My mother." Josiah chuckled, a sound that echoed through the cabin walls like a wounded animal's cry. "Oh dear child, did you really think it was a coincidence? Your family moved to Mill when you were just 2. Your mother was one of us, one of the first elect." Clara felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. Fragmented memories began to form in her mind. Her mother humming strange songs, the nighttime walks to the lake's edge, the secret meetings in the house's basement. How had she forgotten all this? "She died because she tried to leave," Josiah continued, moving closer. "Tried to take you away, but the lake doesn't forgive betrayal. And now you're here, where you always belonged." The mental fog was getting thicker, but Clara forced herself to think. Martha had written "Don't go alone" in the letter. There was something else, something she'd missed. Then she remembered. Martha always carried a small recorder to make archival notes. If she had discovered something about the community. Clara feigned a stumble, letting herself fall to the floor near the door. While Josiah and David watched, she discreetly reached into her jacket pocket. Her fingers found the small rectangular object she'd taken from Martha's drawer before leaving, an old digital recorder. She pressed play. Martha's voice filled the cabin, clear and firm. "To whoever finds this recording, Josiah Blackwater, whose real name is Jonathan Blake, is wanted by the FBI for serial murder in at least 3 states. His followers aren't volunteers. They're victims of hallucinogenic drugs and mind control. The lake water has been contaminated with chemicals that cause hallucinations and submission. There's nothing supernatural here, just a sick man using people's beliefs to satisfy his need for power and control." The effect was immediate. David blinked several times, confusion replacing the vacant expression in Josiah snarled like a wild animal, revealing his true nature. "Lies," he screamed. Martha never understood. She never had faith. But his mask had fallen. The spiritual authority transformed into the desperation of an old man facing exposure. Clara seized the distraction to rise and run toward the window. She smashed the glass with her elbow, ignoring the cuts, and shouted into the night, "Help! There are people trapped here." Josiah lunged at her, but David stepped in front. Father and son, or the illusion of father-son, seemed to react to the breaking of the spell. The bodies of Michael and Sarah Thompson slumped to the side, revealing themselves as grotesquely made-up mannequins. 30 years of preparation, Josiah bellowed, struggling with David. 30 years waiting for the right moment. Clara heard the sound of approaching engines, sirens. Someone had received her distress call, but Josiah heard it too. His eyes filled with desperate fury. If I can't have her, nobody can. He pulled a knife from his waistband and lunged at Clara. David tried to stop him, but the older man was surprisingly strong and the blade sliced through the air, aiming for Clara's heart. That's when the second major twist happened. The cabin door burst open, and a group of armed men stormed the room. But they weren't local police. They wore bulletproof vests with the initials FBI emblazoned in white letters. FBI. Drop your weapons. Josiah froze, knife still raised. His eyes filled with terror. Jonathan Blake, said the lead agent. You're under arrest for first-degree murder, kidnapping, and racketeering. Clara collapsed to the floor, the adrenaline finally giving way to shock. David helped her up, his own eyes still confused but increasingly. How did you know? She asked the agent. Martha Whitmore was our informant for 10 years. She'd been gathering evidence on Blake ever since she discovered his true identity. When she died, she left instructions that if anything happened to you, or David Thompson, we were to be notified immediately. Clara looked at David, seeing in him no longer the desperate man searching for his parents, but someone who had finally found him. Not the ones he expected, but the ones he needed. My parents, he asked, his voice choked with emotion. The agent sighed. We found their bodies 3 months ago, buried near what used to be the cult's campsite. Blake killed them when they discovered his activities. I'm sorry. The following weeks passed in a blur. Jonathan Blake was sentenced to life imprisonment. His activities over 4 decades, finally exposed. Dozens of families finally found answers about missing loved ones. The lake was decontaminated, the hallucinogenic chemicals removed from its waters. Clara sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the lake in golden hues. David had returned to Chicago, but they kept in regular contact. They were both in therapy, processing decades of lies and manipulation. Martha had been braver than anyone imagined. For years, she'd risked her life to protect the residents of Millwood, gathering evidence, alerting authorities, preparing plans for when Blake finally acted again. The phone rang, interrupting Clara's thoughts. Hello, Clara, it's David. I have news, good or bad. Different. Remember the photograph Martha left, the one showing my parents? Clara remembered. The photo had been crucial evidence at the trial. Blake confessed how he made it. He paid a photo editing specialist to create the illusion that my parents were alive. He wanted to use it to lure me in and complete his cycle. Clara closed her eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. So there was nothing supernatural. No, just a very sick man using our pain against us. After hanging up, Clara remained on the porch until the first stars appeared in the sky. The lake looked different now, still beautiful, but no longer haunted. The water reflected the crescent moon like a clean mirror, free of the secrets it had held for so long. She thought of her mother, of the recovered memories of a woman who had tried to protect her from a terrible fate. She thought of Martha, who had dedicated the last years of her life to ensuring the truth finally came to light. She thought of David, who had found not the impossible reunion with his parents, but the peace of knowing the truth. What Clara didn't know, and would never know, is that Jonathan Blake had told the truth about one thing. Her mother had indeed been part of the community,
but not as a victim, as an infiltrator sent by the authorities years before Martha. Her death hadn't been punishment for betrayal, but a sacrifice to protect her daughter and ensure crucial evidence reached the right hands. In the municipal archives, in a box Clara would never find, were her mother's true letters to the FBI, detailing every atrocity committed by Blake and his followers. Letters that had sealed the man's fate, even if it took decades to bear fruit. Some truths, Clara reflected, watching the calm waters of the lake, were too heavy for the living to carry. It was better that some secrets remained buried, especially those that spoke of a love so profound it was willing to make any sacrifice. The lake was finally at peace, and so was Clara. The next morning, she would return to the municipal archives, organize the Thompson case files one last time, and move on. But she would always remember Martha's words. Sometimes courage isn't about seeking the truth, but knowing when to stop searching. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Friends, if you've made it this far, on this intense journey into the mystery of Serenity Lake, you know that stories like this deserve to be shared and discussed. Every twist, every moment of suspense you just experienced alongside Clara and David is the kind of narrative that marks our souls and makes us question the mysteries that might be hidden right under our noses. If this story touched you the same way it touched me, writing it, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next dark adventures we have in store. Because the truth is, the world is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered, and every story we share here is a window into those mysteries. Don't let these moments of suspense and emotion pass you by. Join our community of explorers of the unknown, and let's continue unraveling the most fascinating and disturbing enigmas together.